Welcome to the VybeShift Podcast. The title today is I Don't Know Where to Go From Here, Part 1, When the Old Map No Longer Leads You Home. There are seasons in life when the most honest words we can speak are also the most unsettling. I don't know where to go from here. Perhaps you whispered those words after the end of a relationship that once defined your world. Perhaps you said them after leaving a career that consumed decades of your life. Perhaps you've looked in the mirror after raising children, surviving an illness, retiring, losing someone you love, or simply reaching a stage of life you once believed would finally bring contentment. Nothing dramatic may have happened today. In fact, everything around you may appear remarkably normal. You still wake up, you still go to work, you still care for your family, you still smile when people ask how you're doing. You still fulfill your responsibilities, yet beneath the surface, something has quietly changed. The life you once lived no longer feels like the life you meant to be living. You can't always explain it. You simply know it. There's an ache that words struggle to capture, an inner restlessness that refuses to disappear, a quiet longing that keeps asking questions your busy life cannot silence. If this is where you find yourself today, I want to begin by offering you something that our culture rarely offers. Not advice, not a solution, not another 5-step plan. I want to offer you recognition. Because sometimes the greatest gift we can receive is discovering that what we're experiencing is part of being deeply human. You are not strange for feeling this way. You are not weak. You're not broken. You may simply be standing at one of life's sacred thresholds. When the questions begin. There is something fascinating about the way transformation begins. It rarely announces itself with certainty. It begins with questions. Questions that arrive unexpectedly while driving home from work. Questions that surface during a quiet walk through the woods. Questions that appear while sitting alone with a cup of coffee before the rest of the house awakens. Is this really who I've become? How did I get here? Why doesn't the life I've worked so hard to build feel like home anymore? Where do I go from here? Most of us try to silence these questions as quickly as they appear. We distract ourselves. We become busier. We convince ourselves that we simply need another vacation, another promotion, another purchase, another achievement. We assume that we can just rearrange the outside of our lives, the inside will somehow settle down. But it rarely does. Because these questions are not asking for external change. They're inviting internal attention. The tragedy is not that we ask these questions. The tragedy is that we often become frightened by them. We interpret uncertainty as failure. We mistake questioning for weakness. We believe that because we don't have immediate answers, we've somehow fallen behind everyone else. Yet history tells something very different. Every meaningful transformation begins with the willingness to admit that the old answers no longer satisfy the deeper questions. The quiet drift. One of the greatest misconceptions we carry is that we lose ourselves in dramatic moments. We imagine there will be one defining event, one terrible decision, one catastrophic mistake. But for most people, that isn't how it happens. We drift. So gradually, so quietly, that we scarcely notice. We say yes when our heart is asking us to say no. We postpone dreams because this doesn't seem like the right season. We begin measuring our worth by productivity instead of presence. We become experts at meeting expectations while slowly abandoning our own inner knowing. One compromise, one obligation, one distraction, one unspoken disappointment, then another, and another. Until one day we wake up living a life that is successful by someone else's standards, but strangely unfamiliar to our own soul. The heartbreaking part is that this drift is rarely intentional. It is usually born from love. We wanted to provide. We wanted to protect. We wanted to be responsible. We wanted to belong. We wanted to do the right thing. There is nothing inherently wrong with those desires. But when they become disconnected from who we truly are, they slowly pull us away from ourselves. Not because we stopped caring, but because we stopped listening. The illusion of being lost. When people tell me they feel lost, I often wonder if that's actually true. Can you lose something that has always remained with you? Or is it possible that you simply become disconnected from it? There's an important difference. If you are lost, then perhaps someone else must rescue you. But if you have merely lost contact with your own inner wisdom, then your journey is not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering. The world constantly tells us to search outside of ourselves. Find the perfect career. Find the perfect relationship. Find the perfect strategy. Find the perfect mentor. Find the perfect version of yourself. Yet beneath all of that searching lives a quieter invitation. Stop searching long enough to begin listening. Because the deepest wisdom has never shouted. It has always whispered. The problem is not that your inner voice disappeared. The problem is that life became so loud you could no longer hear it. The space between who you were and who you are becoming. Every authentic transformation contains a season that feels deeply uncomfortable. It is the space between identities. You no longer fit inside the person you used to be, yet you have not fully grown into the person you are becoming. This in-between place can feel confusing because our minds crave certainty. We want immediate clarity, immediate direction, immediate confidence. But nature teaches a different lesson. Seeds spend time beneath the soil before anyone sees growth. The caterpillar dissolves before becoming the butterfly. The forest becomes strangely quiet before the new life emerges after winter. Transformation has always required a season where very little appears to be happening. Perhaps that's where you are today. Not failing, not falling behind, simply becoming. The mind wants a destination. The soul is inviting a relationship with yourself that is more honest than anything you've known before. Learning to trust the silence. One of the most courageous things we can do is resist the urge to fill every moment of uncertainty. Not every unanswered question needs an immediate answer. Sometimes it needs our presence. Sometimes clarity doesn't arrive because we force it. Sometimes it arrives because we finally become still enough to notice what has quietly been waiting for us all along. This is why silence can feel so uncomfortable. The silence isn't empty. It is full of truths we've been too busy to hear, full of grief we've postponed, full of dreams we've neglected, full of wisdom we've ignored. Perhaps the silence you've been avoiding is not your enemy. Perhaps it is the place where your own heart has been patiently waiting to meet you again. A moment of reflection. As you sit with today's conversation, I invite you to resist the temptation to solve anything. Simply notice. Notice where your life feels deeply alive. Notice where it feels heavy. Notice the places where you continue to live from obligation rather than authenticity. Notice the dreams that still stir quietly beneath the surface. And most importantly, notice the questions that keep returning. The questions that refuse to leave us are often the very ones that are trying to lead us home. Closing thought. If today has resonated with you, perhaps it is because you are beginning to realize something profoundly important. You are not standing at the end of your story. You are standing at the end of an old chapter. There's a difference. One asks you to mourn what has been. The other invites you to become curious about what is possible. So if you find yourself whispering, "I don't know where to go from here," allow those words to become something other than a confession of defeat. Let them become an opening to greater honesty, greater presence, greater authenticity, and perhaps for the very first time in a long time, an opening to yourself. Reflection questions for part 1. Reflection question number 1. What questions have been quietly returning to your heart that you have been too busy or perhaps too afraid to fully acknowledge? Reflection question number 2. Where in your life have you been following someone else's map rather than listening to your own inner compass? Reflection question number 3. Looking back, can you identify the small compromises that slowly carried you away from what felt most authentic? Reflection question number 4. What part of your life feels as though it has come to a natural conclusion, even if you've been reluctant to admit it? And reflection question number 5. If you've trusted that this season of uncertainty was preparing you rather than punishing you, how might you walk through this week differently? Until next time, remember, you don't need to have the entire path revealed before you take your next authentic step. Sometimes the greatest act of courage is simply remaining present long enough for your own heart to show you the way. Part 2. The life you built and the life your heart longs to live. When success no longer feels like home. There is a moment that catches many people by surprise. It often arrives long after they have achieved the very things they once believed would finally bring peace. The career has been built. The family has been raised. The mortgage has been paid. The promotions have come. The responsibilities have been carried. The goals have been accomplished. From the outside, life appears successful. Yet inside, a quiet questioning begins to echo. Why doesn't this feel the way I thought it would? For many people, this question is immediately followed by guilt. I should be grateful. Other people would love to have my life. What's wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with you. Gratitude and longing can exist together. You can deeply appreciate the life you have built while simultaneously sensing your soul is asking you to live more honestly. These two realities are not in conflict. They are invitations. One honors your past, the other calls you forward to your future. The invisible agreements we make. As children, we rarely choose the beliefs that shape our lives. We inherited them. Some are spoken aloud. Others are communicated through silence. We learn that being productive earns approval, that pleasing others creates safety, that achievement deserves celebration. The rest must be justified, that vulnerability is risky, that asking for help is weakness. Over time, these beliefs stop feeling like beliefs. They begin to feel like reality. Without realizing it, we make invisible agreements. I'll keep everybody happy. I'll never disappoint anyone. My worth depends upon what I accomplish. If I slow down, I'll fall behind. These agreements often help us survive. They may even help us succeed. But survival and success are not always the same as freedom. The tragedy is not that we made these agreements. The tragedy is that many of us never stop to ask whether they are still true. The quiet cost of constant becoming. Our culture celebrates becoming. Become more successful, become more influential, become wealthier, become more attractive, become more accomplished. There's nothing inherently wrong with growth. Growth is one of life's most beautiful expressions. But somewhere along the way, many of us begin believing that who we are today is never enough. So we spend years chasing a future version of ourselves. If I can just reach the next milestone, if I can just earn a little more, if I can just finally prove myself, then I'll arrive. But arrival never comes because the finish line keeps moving. The more we define our worth by becoming someone else, the more disconnected we become from appreciating who we already are. This endless pursuit leaves us exhausted, not because we've worked hard, but because we've forgotten how to simply be. The soul doesn't speak the language of achievement. The mind loves measurements. How much? How many? How fast? How productive? How successful? The soul asks different questions. Was I fully present? Did I love well? Did I live honestly? Did I honor what I knew was to be true? Did I become more compassionate? Did I leave people feeling more seen than when I found them? These questions rarely appear on performance reviews. They aren't reflected in bank accounts. They cannot be measured by followers or titles. Yet, when life begins drawing towards its later chapters, these are often the questions that matter most. The soul has never been impressed by accumulation. It has always been interested in alignment. The courage to stop performing. Perhaps one of the greatest burdens we carry is the belief that we must continually perform. Perform competence, perform confidence, perform certainty, perform happiness, perform strength. We become so accustomed to wearing these identities that eventually we forget they are our masks. The exhausting part is not the performance itself, it's the fear that if we stop performing, people may no longer love us. But authentic relationships are never built upon performance. They are built upon presence. The people who truly belong in your life do not need a perfected version of you. They long to know the real you. Ironically, the authenticity we fear may become the very thing that deepens our connection with others. The invitation hidden within dissatisfaction. Many people spend years trying to eliminate dissatisfaction. Yet, what if dissatisfaction isn't always a problem to solve? What if it's a messenger? Physical pain tells us something the body needs attention. Loneliness reminds us of our need for connection. Hunger calls us towards nourishment. In much the same way, spiritual dissatisfaction may simply be your deeper self saying, there's more truth waiting to be lived. Not necessarily more possessions, not necessarily more accomplishments, simply more authenticity, more congruence, more wholeness, more you. Instead of asking, how do I make this feeling go away, perhaps a better question is, what is this feeling trying to teach me? Sometimes our discomfort is not asking us to escape our lives. It is asking us to inhabit them more fully. The gentle return to yourself. The beautiful thing about awakening is that it rarely requires dramatic change. It begins with gentle honesty. Honesty about what brings life to your spirit. Honesty about what quietly drains it. Honesty about the relationships that nourish you. Honesty about the habits that no longer serve you. Honesty about the dreams you've postponed because they seemed impractical. You do not need to solve your entire future today. You simply need to become willing to stop abandoning yourself. Every moment of honesty is a step home. Every act of authenticity is an act of remembrance. Every time you choose alignment over approval, you're strengthening the quiet voice that has been patiently waiting within you all along. A moment of reflection. As you move through the coming days, notice where your life feels like performance and where it feels like presence. Notice the moments when you find yourself trying to prove your worth. Notice the moments when you feel completely at ease without needing to prove anything at all. Those moments are not accidental. They are signposts. They are gently pointing you toward the life your heart has been longing to live. Closing thoughts for part 2. Perhaps the reason you don't know where to go from here is not because you've lost your way. Perhaps it's because the person you have been trying so hard to become is no longer the person your heart is asking you to be. That realization can feel unsettling, but it also is profoundly liberating. because the path forward is no longer about becoming someone different. It's about having the courage to become fully yourself. Reflection questions for part 2. Reflection question number 1. What invisible agreements have shaped the way you measure your worth? Reflection question number 2. Where have you confused achievement with fulfillment? Reflection question number 3. In what areas of your life do you feel as though you are performing rather than simply being? Reflection question number 4. What forms of dissatisfaction might actually be inviting you toward a more authentic life? And reflection question number 5. If you no longer needed to prove your value to anyone, what might change about the way you live tomorrow? Until next time, remember, the life your heart longs to live is not waiting somewhere in the future. It begins the moment you stop measuring your worth by what you achieve and begin honoring yourself by how truthfully you live. Part 3. Finding your way home. One honest step at a time. The myth of finding your purpose. If someone were to ask you what you are searching for, you might instinctively answer, I'm trying to find my purpose. It is a phrase we hear so often that we rarely stop to question it. But what if the greatest misunderstanding is contained within those very words? What if your purpose has never been lost? What if it has simply been buried beneath years of expectation, obligation, fear, achievement, disappointment, and survival? Purpose is not a destination hidden somewhere beyond the next promotion, relationship, or accomplishment. It is not something that suddenly appears one morning like a prize waiting to be discovered. Purpose is expressed through the way you choose to live. It reveals itself every time you act from love instead of fear. Every time you choose authenticity over approval. Every time you become fully present to the life that is already unfolding before you. Perhaps the question is not, what is my purpose? Perhaps it is, what keeps me from living the purpose that is already trying to express itself through me? That question changes everything. The path appears through walking. One of the reasons we become paralyzed is because we believe we must first see the entire journey before taking the first step. We wait for certainty. We wait for confidence. We wait until every doubt has disappeared. Yet life has never worked that way. Think back over your own life. The relationships that changed you, the opportunities that shaped you, the lessons that transformed you. Very few of them were planned with perfect clarity. Most of them revealed themselves one step at a time. The same is true now. You do not need a 10-year plan. You need enough courage to take one honest step, then another, then another. Clarity is rarely the beginning of movement. More often, movement becomes the beginning of clarity. Listening for what makes you come alive. For years, many of us have been taught to ask, what should I do? It is a practical question, but it is often the wrong question. A deeper question is, what brings me alive? Notice the moments when time seems to disappear. Notice the conversations that energize rather than exhaust you. Notice the work that feels meaningful even when it is difficult. Notice where your heart naturally turns when no one is telling you where to look. These are not random experiences. They are quiet invitations. Your life leaves clues. Your deepest values leave fingerprints. Your heart has been speaking all along. The invitation is not to force an answer. The invitation is to become curious enough to notice. The courage to trust yourself again. Perhaps the greatest loss many of us experience is not a loss of direction. It's the loss of trust in ourselves. We begin believing that everyone else knows better. We look outward for permission, outward for validation, outward for certainty. Eventually, we become strangers to our own inner wisdom. But there is something beautiful about wisdom. It never disappears. It simply waits, patiently, quietly, lovingly. Every moment you pause before reacting, every moment you tell yourself the truth, every moment you choose compassion over judgment, you strengthen your relationship with that inner wisdom. Self-trust is not built through grand declarations. It is built through thousands of small moments where your actions become aligned with your deepest values. Living from your inner compass. Earlier in the series, we spoke about the difference between following a map and living from inner compass. A map tells you where others have gone. A compass helps you remain true to who you are while navigating unfamiliar terrain. The older we become, the more important this distinction becomes, because there comes a point when no one else can tell us what a meaningful life should look like. Only we can answer that question. Your compass may not always reveal the entire journey, but it will faithfully illuminate the next honest step. And sometimes the next honest step is all you need. Coming home is a daily practice. Many people imagine that transformation happens in one extraordinary moment. Occasionally it does. More often it unfolds quietly. You choose to become more present today than you were yesterday. You listen a little more deeply. You judge yourself a little less harshly. You become a little more willing to say no to what diminishes you, a little more willing to say yes to what nourishes you. These choices may seem small, yet they are anything but, because every authentic choice is a declaration. I am coming home to myself. Home is not a place you arrive, it is a relationship you cultivate. Day by day, moment by moment, choice by choice. A moment of reflection. As this three-part journey comes to a close, I invite you to resist the temptation to evaluate yourself. Instead, become curious. What has this conversation awakened within you? What truth has been quietly asking for your attention? What part of yourself is ready to be welcomed home rather than criticized? Remember, the goal has never been perfection. The goal is presence. The goal is not becoming someone else. The goal is becoming more completely yourself. Closing thoughts. If there's one hope I have for you after listening to this series, it is that you will begin looking at your uncertainty differently. Instead of seeing it as evidence that you're lost, see it as evidence that your heart is no longer willing to settle for a life that isn't fully your own. The questions you carry are not signs of failure. They're invitations into a deeper relationship with yourself. Walk gently. Be patient. Trust the process. You do not need to know exactly where you are going. You simply have to remain faithful to the quiet voice within that keeps inviting you toward what is true. One honest step, one courageous choice, one loving moment at a time. This is how we find our way home. Reflection questions for part 3. Reflection question number 1. Where in your life are you waiting for certainty instead of taking the next honest step? Reflection question number 2. What activities, relationships, and moments consistently make you feel most alive? Reflection question number 3. How has your inner compass been trying to guide you in recent months? Reflection question number 4. What would it be like to measure your life by authenticity rather than achievement? And reflection question number 5. What is one small loving action you can take this week that would represent coming home to yourself? Continuing the journey. If today's conversation resonated with you, remember that this is only the one step in a much larger journey of self-discovery. The VybeShift Core Problems Library was created for moments exactly like this. Those seasons when life feels confusing, overwhelming, or disconnected from who you know yourself to be. Each VybeShift solving process explores one core human struggle with greater depth, practical reflection, and compassionate guidance. If this episode stirred something within you, I especially invite you to spend time with VSP number 5, I Don't Know What Matters Anymore. That solving process explores what happens when the things that once motivated us no longer do, and how we begin reconnecting with what is deeply meaningful instead of simply reacting to life's demands. Many people discover that before we can know where we're going, we first need to rediscover what truly matters. You can explore VSP5 and the rest of the Core Problems Library by following the link in the show notes. There you will find immersive audio experiences and companion reflection journals designed to help you move beyond insight and into lasting transformation. Until next time, remember this. Your life is not asking you to become someone you've never been. It is inviting you to courageously remember who you have always been beneath the noise, beneath the fear, beneath the expectations of the world. And perhaps that remembrance is where every meaningful journey truly begins.